My turn.
An independent senator known for his Brooklyn accent.
Change never, ever takes place from the top on down.
Populist message.
The level of wealth inequality in America is grotesque.
An anti-establishment appeal.
Establishment Democrats don't generate excitement.
Bernie Sanders is jumping into the race for president again.
Hi, I'm Bernie Sanders. I'm running for president.
In the 2016 primaries, he pushed a democratic socialist message, and he found a big audience for it. He ultimately came up short.
I accept your nomination.
But many of his ideas have lived on.
In a modern, moral, and wealthy society, no American should be too poor to live.
In 2016, he was the only challenger to the Democratic establishment. But this time around, he'll be up against a crowded and diverse group of opponents. Some have adopted ideas he made popular in 2016.
Well, how do you feel about Medicare for all?
Medicare for all.
Medicare for all.
So what are the issues he made pillars of the progressive agenda? A $15 minimum wage, tuition-free public college, and Medicare for all.
Understand that health care is a right, not a privilege.
But Sanders' liberal credentials may have taken a hit over his perceived failure to address claims of sexism during his 2016 campaign. He has since apologized.
What they experienced was absolutely unacceptable.
So how is Sanders taken on President Trump? He's been one of his most outspoken critics.
The most dangerous president in modern American history. Most people who observe them would agree is a pathological liar.
Trump has returned the insult.
Crazy Bernie.
You know, he's always like complaining, he's jumping around, the hair's going crazy. Lunatic.
So what are his chances? He's near the top of the early polls. He's got some big advantages over his opponents, including a small donor fundraising list, a 50-state organization, and fervent supporters. He has major name recognition and knows how to electrify a crowd.
We are going to take on the drug companies, end their greed, and lower the cost of prescription drugs.
But he could be up against a base who are looking for a fresh face to take on Trump, even if it's on a platform that Bernie built.
Personally, I think he missed his time, but I like Bernie because he is one person that, you know, on trade, he sort of would agree on trade. I'm being very tough on trade. He was tough on trade. The problem is he doesn't know what to do about it. We're doing something very spectacular on trade, but I wish Bernie well. It'll be interesting to see how he does. I think what happened to Bernie maybe was not so nice. I think he was taken advantage of. He ran great 4 years ago, and he was not treated with respect by Clinton. And that was too bad. I thought what happened to Bernie Sanders 4 years ago was quite sad as it pertains to our country. So we'll see how he does. You got a lot of people running, but only one person's going to win. I hope you know who that person is. Goodbye, everybody.
New concerns for Democrats about the party's direction heading into 2020. Senator Bernie Sanders immediately making waves as he kicks off his second White House bid, but posing a challenge for other candidates. As the Washington Post puts it, quote, caught between President Trump and the left, Democratic candidates seek to avoid the socialism squeeze, unquote. President Trump tweeting this today, quote, crazy Bernie has just entered the race. I wish him well, exclamation point. Some of the 2020 Democrats appearing to be hedging their bets. Senator Cory Booker recently warning that Medicare for all will be difficult to pass. And Senator Kamala Harris applauding the Green New Deal, but adding that while some of its goals will not be achievable. Meantime, other 2020 contenders plowing full steam ahead to the far, far left. Senator Elizabeth Warren unveiling a plan to fund universal child care through a tax on the very wealthy. Watch this.
When people say, so, it's going to be really expensive, and the answer is it is. This will be about 4 times more than we have invested in our children. But that's exactly what we need to do. We can pay for universal child care and a whole lot more if we just ask the 0.1% to pay a fair share.
Let's not even get into the wealth tax being unconstitutional, but Bernie Sanders making a familiar sounding promise while touting his Medicare for all plan. Listen to him.
Going to say, people, you're going to lose your current health insurance and employment. Yeah, but you're going to have the same exact doctor. You're going to have more freedom of choice under our proposal than you have under the current proposals.
Sanders' team says it has raised a record-setting $6 million in its first day. Marie Harf.
So I think this is interesting because in 2018, the way Democrats took the House back was by running moderates across the Midwest, across the South, across the Plain States. And the Democratic Party knows that. So I think there is a recognition that the other side will try to paint the entire Democratic field as far, far left and socialist, using AOC, using Bernie, using Elizabeth Warren. But what I hear from a lot of Democratic primary voters is job number one is beating Donald Trump, and they believe that someone more moderate, right, and they actually put Kamala Harris more in the moderate category, Amy Klobuchar, they want Joe Biden to run, they want Beto O'Rourke to run, they want Mitch Landrieu to run. These are people they think are the real future of the party based on how we did in 2018.
I want to get, just really quickly, I want to get Bernie Sanders' response to President Trump calling him crazy. Bernie Sanders, the senator, tweeted this in part. What's crazy is that we have a president who is a racist, a sexist, xenophobe, and a fraud. We're going to bring people together and not only defeat Trump, but transform the economic and political life of this country. Harris, take it away.
We've only seen one incumbent lose since 1984. That was George H.W. Bush. It is really hard to beat an incumbent president. I think the Democrats have to figure out not just how to beat Trump, but how to break history. Yeah, and I'm really curious to know how they're going to do that. By the way, Bernie Sanders may be a bigger problem for every other Democrat in the race. He raised that $6 million, 5.9 in 24 hours after announcing, but he did it with individuals whose average was $27. We haven't seen that since Barack Obama. And that's problematic for Democrats because none of those people that you just mentioned seem to match up. I mean, President Trump already has a nickname for most of these people.
Well, Kamala Harris is raising a lot of money. Beto raised a lot of money from small dollar donors. I think what's interesting, Harris,
she's stepping in it right now with the whole Jussie Smollett thing. So it'll be interesting to see her dig out of that.
The historical precedent I would actually quote is the three presidents since World War II who have lost re-elections all faced a very serious primary challenger. None of those primary challengers ended up winning, but they so weakened the incumbent, whether it was Jimmy Carter or George H.W. Bush.
But not since 1984. I mean,
well,
just open air.
George H.W. Bush did. George H.W. Bush faced a very serious primary challenge.
Jimmy Carter was challenged within his own party. And it was actually, you go back to 1980.
That's what I'm saying. That was a primary challenger.
A president did not win re-election.
And so
you see the Democrats putting up anybody in the group you just mentioned that can take out an incumbent.
Of Ross Perot.
My point is, if John Kasich
so maybe Howard Schultz could be the Ross Perot of this.
My point was that if Donald Trump gets a real primary challenger, I don't think they'll win the primary, but they could weaken him. That's another historical precedent we should look at.
Okay, but again, this is
the
a
two
very
most popular governors in the country are Republicans. Hogan said today he's not.
John Kasich's going to do it.
Right. John Kasich won one state back in 2016.
He needs to ditch the angry guy thing because Kasich's got a grumpy old man problem.
It's really it is a war of ideas at this point, an economic victory, and Democrats have to realize that. I think some of the moderate Democrats that Marie is talking about, they realize that. They went and ran on local economic issues in their home districts where Republicans were vulnerable, and that's why they have control of the House. Socialism is easy to defeat in a general election. That's why these candidates have to be incredibly careful. They're talking out both sides of their mouths. You can't have it both ways. You cannot have full-throated Medicare for all, free college tuition, $15 an hour minimum wage, and universal basic income,
and
have no way to pay for it.
That's not technically
a government takeover of our health insurance system is socialism. No. Joe?
What this gives President Trump is a bold contrast. He is very good at simple messages. Make America great again, for instance. In this case, what do you want? Capitalism or socialism?
It's not
that
capitalism.
That will be the theme of the 2020 election.
Okay,
we can talk about all the minutia. That's what we'll come down to.
If that's not socialism, then what is socialism?
Then when you have
and don't just say it's the means of production. What is socialism? If you're saying that's not socialism, what is socialism? I want you to define it right now. If you're saying that's not what it is, what is it?
Well, I was actually going to say a government takeover of all of our main economic industries, which is not what's happening, except for Donald Trump is now picking winners and losers when it comes to certain industries with his tariffs. But let's just to answer
the airline airline
Wait, can
industry.
I answer Joe's point,
Universal
though?
basic income. How is that not a government takeover? $80 trillion over 10 years. How is that not a government takeover?
Gotta go.
It's actually more like democratic socialism throughout parts of Europe, and we don't have a whole time to get into this. But
We're not Europe.
But to Joe's point,
How about that?
Donald Trump will try and make that argument, and I agree he's a master brander. I think if there's a Democrat on stage next to him who cannot be called a socialist, it will be hard to make that argument. Here's my point.
Here's a little fact. Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill outlaws private insurance in this country. Anybody can read it. Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, and Kirsten Gillibrand all endorsed it. And they're going to have to own it every day until people go to the polls in 2020. No private insurance for everybody.